Hello, everyone. Welcome to Transform Now. I'm Brad Hairston,
And I'm Michael Marchuk.
and this is the weekly Pulse Check. We're taking a look at what's happened in the world of automation and AI. And as always, there is a lot going on. So, Michael, we're going to cover 4 articles today, and I will take us through these and get your reaction.
Bring it on.
Then I'll react to your reaction, and we'll just go from there. Okay, so first article is from the Times of India, and it's titled, One AI Prompt, 2 White-Collar Jobs Gone. Perplexity CEO Aravind Srinivas, his bold claim sparks debate. So in a recent podcast appearance, the Perplexity AI CEO, who was just mentioned, he introduced their agent framework, which is called Comet. And it's pretty impressive. I mean,
It's their browser. It's an AI browser.
Yeah. And the more I've read about it, I looked at some other articles about it as well. They present it as a browser. In essence, it's essentially an agent. So it can answer questions, but it can also act on your behalf. It can browse the web. It can run multi-step reasoning. It can retrieve structured data. It can plug into APIs. So it can do a lot of the things that agents.
I want to know, can it scroll TikTok for me, though? That is actually the most important thing.
Well, that is a good question. So why don't you address that question and just give us your thoughts on Comet and what are the implications of this announcement?
So this is something that we've sort of seen within the RPA and then now the intelligent automation space for quite a while, years. This new technology will replace, and then you fill in the blank, everybody. This is everything's going to be automated tomorrow, and we've got the technology. This one technology will do it all.
Yeah.
So what this is good at is getting news reviews, and heck, we're talking about it here on the podcast, right? So I think part of this is a little bit of that whole sensationalism going forward. The reality is that this is still open beta, so they're still kind of testing things out here. Agent frameworks, there are many of them. So Perplexity is adding one more to the heap for all this stuff. Not that it's a bad thing. I mean, yeah, one will eventually start taking dominance over another. We just don't know who's yet. Yeah. The reality is that the 2 that they cite as the 2 white-collar jobs that are going away, one is a recruiter and the other is an admin assistant. And so I would bet that an admin assistant does a lot more than what this browser does. And I would bet that a recruiter does a lot more than what this browser does or what this agent framework could possibly do. So again, let's just start from there, from reality's perspective. This isn't going to replace anybody's job. This is not going to put people out of the work. This is really a framework technology that people can use to automate very small tasks within their own computer. Now, is it possible that this could automate several tasks in a row, like checking someone's schedule and then sending out a meeting request and doing a follow-up email for it? Oh my gosh, that's great. That'll save me 5 minutes. But then you do that 5 minutes per person times your entire 100,000 person organization over 10 years time. That's $100 trillion, right? So there you go. It's definitely worthwhile, right? But that's the kind of math and that kind of sensationalism all this puts together. The reality is that, again, no one's job is at stake here, but this is a cool technology. Stack it on top of the rest of the cool technologies that are out there and see what comes of it. So that's my interpretation of what this article kind of talked about. It's a little overhyped.
Okay. Well, Srinivas shared his vision for Comet and said that he sees it becoming more of a operating system for what he calls white collar productivity, something that runs in the background and it's ready to handle lots of different commands in plain language.
Is that kind of like Clippy was always running in the background?
It does sound like Clippy. Well, it's available in beta if you're interested. I think it's $200 a month. They said later they will probably bill it out on more of an outcome basis, like most agents are billed. And they said that within the next 6 to 12 months, almost all of the core functions that Comet performs will be fully automated. So they are looking at this as a true, very functional, very helpful agent that you give a command to, and it goes off and it does something with very little oversight. I tell everyone I know, no matter what job they're in, you ought to learn as much as you can about AI. It's not going to replace anyone's job, but it will change everyone's job. And I think in many ways for the better. So get ahead of it. And I don't know that I've been talking to any administrative assistants or recruiters about it, but maybe I should add them to the list since they're clearly they're in the
target here, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, good advice. Let's go to the next article. This one is from TechCrunch, and it's titled "Elon Musk Confirms Shutdown of Tesla Dojo, an Evolutionary Dead End," is the quote from Elon. So with this story, we learned that Tesla has, in fact, disbanded the team that's working on its Dojo AI training supercomputer. Now, this was intended to train Tesla's full self-driving cars, that the inner workings of that. They also were looking at it to power their humanoid robots. So there were a lot of big aspirations for Dojo, a lot of things that hinged on it. What's the fallout from this, Michael?
Well, I think I had a different read on this. They're not shutting down Dojo like the whole project. They're shutting down their second iteration of Dojo, which was based on a specific chipset. And there's a difference there. So I think the project's still continuing with some new chipsets that are involved to help them advance this. What it says to me is two things. One, they're moving very quickly because the chipset that they're getting rid of in favor of a newer chipset they developed shows that that technology is continuing to advance at blinding speeds, and that they're willing to take that kind of loss in stopping a project of that size in order to move forward with a different project that was going to supplant it anyway at some point in the future. It just got so far ahead of itself that the project that was in the middle of being built was now being replaced by one that's next. So again, tough from a financial perspective, tough from a personnel perspective, because you realize these people have been working on this to get it up and running. And now a newer technology that their own people are developing has made it obsolete. So I think the project is still moving forward in a broader sense. Just this particular part of it, the Dojo 2, is where their new chipsets have been implemented to create a different environment. So again, what this says to me is chips and technology are moving at breakneck speeds to the point where even the fastest of the fastest, I mean, you can't see that Musk and his team is on the bleeding edge. They're drawing blood before the knife even gets there. That's how bleeding edge they are. So it's interesting to see that.
Yeah, and the article does mention the other chips that you referenced that they're continuing to focus their attention on, the AI5 chips that they're co-developing or co-manufacturing with TSMC. That's for Tesla driver assistance. And then the AI6 chips that they're developing with Samsung. That's for onboard inference, which is, again, in the self-driving cars. And then it's also envisioned to play a big role in large-scale AI training. So you're right. They're continuing on some fronts. They're not continuing on others. Say what you will about Elon Musk. I give him credit for just being willing to innovate at, as you said, breakneck speed, and then admit, hey, this is not working, or it's not moving as fast as we need it to. We need to put all of our focus over here. And it cost him millions and millions, if not billions of dollars, but it's chump change, to Elon, and he can afford to do that and take risk. And so I think, to me, that's what you want in a CEO, someone that's not afraid to take chances. And some of those things work out, some of them don't, but he's willing to course correct in the middle of it.
Yep, I agree.
All right, next article. This one is from Tech Radar. It's titled Small Models, Big Wins, 4 Reasons Enterprises Are Choosing SLMs over LLMs. Now, this is not a new trend. We've seen this for some time, but this piece is, I think, good in terms of explaining why SLMs, small language models, are getting so much attention from enterprises these days. Initially, it was all about LLMs. Now it really has shifted to SLMs. And this article gives kind of 4 key reasons for that. It mentions at a high level that companies are finding that SLMs can actually be more supportive in helping companies reach their specific goals. And I saw another piece from Gartner that said that over 50% of enterprises have evaluated SLMs with parameter counts in the 1 to 10 billion range, just in the last 6 to 12 months. So a lot of interest, a lot of research in these SLMs. So talk about why you think SLMs might be the right fit for many companies, Michael, based on what you see in this article.
Yeah, there's a couple of things. First, let's just start talking about what an SLM is versus an LLM. So large language model ends up having hundreds of billions of parameters and knows a little about everything, sometimes a lot about everything, but requires massive supercomputers, as we just talked about with Elon Musk, to help train these things and help deliver the output for each query. So companies like Tesla and some of those large ones can afford to run these things on their own. Others will use AI or Microsoft or AWS to help run those in the back end. The reality is that those large language models, while they have a broad context, it's unfocused. So the article talks about if you start talking about APs, that acronym AP can refer to a couple different things depending on the context. Now, if you're doing this in finance, it's accounts payable. If you're doing this in IT, it means it's an access point for Wi-Fi. So understanding the context now becomes much more important, which requires additional horsepower to ensure that it's taking the right context, which is where we're seeing a lot of these hallucinations kind of go off track because they're not really sure exactly. And they're making up what they believe the context is, and that doesn't add to the accuracy. So leveraging an SLM, which is, hey, I'm going to have a small language model that just does accounting work, right? For example. Right. Now we've got something where I say AP, there's no doubt what we're talking about. It understands the context because that's all it understands is that context. So bringing that into bear, that's one benefit for a small language model. The addition to that, which is I don't need to know everything about everything. Now my model itself can be much smaller and run on less powerful hardware. So now you have the capability of taking this massive thing, which require multiple GPUs to be able to give you an answer and all this, power to, make that happen. You can now scale that back to the point where, we'll scale it all the way back and say, this is going to be running on your phone, for example, or it could be running on a smaller computer or a small set of servers within your data center that don't necessarily require the same kind of horsepower to operate the large language model because they are doing it in a very narrow context. So those types of things are super important. When it comes to adoption. When you talk about all these companies who are adopting these, it's because of that. Well, we can go out and leverage a large language model from one of the larger players when we need it. But in fact, if we have smaller language models that we can apply for a very specific task, let's just apply those. Just like when we hire somebody on for a role within an organization. Hey, I may know IT, I may know marketing, I may know a little bit of accounting, but if you want me to do all of it, it's going to take me a lot more effort to be able to do that versus hiring 3 lower level people to say, okay, we're going to have one accountant. We're going to have one person doing our marketing work, and we're going to have one person doing this. So you spread the work out, but now you can have lesser powerful agents, if you will, activated to be able to support that using these small language models. So there are some real benefits for going down that path. And in fact, between this one and the last 2 articles, they touch on 2 of the things that we had originally talked about in January of 2025 in terms of what do we see for 2025? We saw more customized chips for running AI, and we saw the emergence and the more adoption of the small language models. So It's happening. I'm glad to see that these are happening because these are really important for not only the adoption, but for the accuracy and the comfort level that companies will have in using them.
I'm sure that was one of my predictions, right? That we would see more SLM usage.
We'll have to wait till the end of the year.
Okay. I've already been right on one of my other predictions, but we won't get into that. So, Michael, I did a little research. There are about 20 to 30 very well-known SLMs on the market that many companies are taking advantage of. That includes Llama, Quinn, DeepSeek, Gemma, Phi, Mistral, Sarvim. So these are, most of those we've heard of or used today. According to Global Newswire, the SLM market is expected to be right around $1 billion in 2025, but it's projected by 2032 to go to $5.5 billion, which is a CAGR of 28.7%. So those that are watching the market, they see this thing mushrooming and continuing to grow. And we know, of course, with our iPhones and other devices, SLMs are playing a role, some more than others. Have yet to see Apple Intelligence do anything on my iPhone, but
it's coming, Brad. They're going to have it on your phone soon.
I'm still waiting, but that's using SLMs on the iPhone device, which also work in concert with LLMs that are server side for more demanding tasks, or at least that's what they say. So I think we'll see this trend continue for some time, and those are all interesting points made by that article. So speaking of SLMs, I mentioned that DeepSeek is one of those that is got a lot of attention. This one, DeepSeek, showed up earlier this year and kind of rocked Silicon Valley to a degree. So here's an article about that. It's from BBC, and it's titled, "It Shocked the Market, but Has China's DeepSeek Changed AI?" So we know what happened when they hit the radar. They mentioned that they had delivered an LLM at a fraction of the cost of OpenAI. It seemed to have a lot of the same functionality and performance. And what did we see? We saw $600 billion flow out of the financial markets in the US literally overnight. Venture capitalist Mark Andreessen referred to it as the AI Sputnik moment. So it was a big deal, and I think a lot of people in Silicon Valley and a lot of the big AI tech companies in the U.S. were pretty shaken by it. So now we're 6 months later, and this article asked the question: so where do things stand now with DeepSeek? So what do you see in the article, Michael, that caught your attention?
A couple things. So I would agree that DeepSeek did shake things up, and I think for the better, on a couple different fronts. One, it showed that the Silicon Valley is not the only keeper of bright people. There are a lot of people globally who are able to bring out their intelligence and build on top of technologies that were just developed to help improve or change them. So I think that's a huge benefit. In this case, it happens to be China, but Mistral is from France. I mean, there's no shortage of places where these people are. So when you see the innovations that are coming out, DeepSeek just happened to be one, and it just happened to be from China. But the reality is there's a lot of people working on these things, and they're not all in Silicon Valley. So I think that was probably one of the biggest, shocks to the market. Like, oh my goodness, I thought we were so far ahead. So when you talk about a Sputnik moment, that is the Sputnik moment. Hey, back in the day when Sputnik was launched, America thought we were the cat's meow when it came to the space program, and all of a sudden we weren't. And that lit a bunch of fires. So I think that is helpful. Competition is helpful. It's just in general from an innovation standpoint. So I think that's one part of it. The second is leveraging the concept that even though DeepSeek is considered a large language model, it is a smaller version of a large language model. So getting that technology and the way that they trained it to be able to support the operations they have was unique, was different. And so now that's become a lot more common as people said, oh, I never thought of it that way. And they're approaching it a different way. So I think all of these things from an innovation standpoint one is going to help spur on another company somewhere else, maybe in Silicon Valley in America, or maybe in China, maybe somewhere else in the world, where this technology will then grow and continue to create new innovation within the space. So in my mind, what's going on with DeepSeek was an eye-opener in a good way, not necessarily from a financial standpoint, because they were having, everyone thought, oh my gosh, what does this mean for companies like, NVIDIA, who's got all their chips that are putting out there. Yeah. And the reality is, at the end of the article, they said, well, DeepSeek 2 is on the horizon, but it hasn't arrived yet. And the reason why it hasn't arrived because of lack of high-end GPU chips to help it run. So these are the issues that we're going to see plaguing the industry for a while. And the reality is that we see even with the article we had earlier with Elon Musk, their chips are advancing at such a rate that NVIDIA, tomorrow could succumb to some other small company who comes up with this brilliant innovation. And we just don't know. But the reality is right now, this is what we have. We have technology that NVIDIA's been producing that a lot of companies are basing their LLM technology upon, because it's the best there is right now. Yeah. So anyway, that's what I thought about this, is that DeepSeek was a really good spark to light a fire under folks who are saying, well, maybe there's other ways to do this. Yeah.
Well, the article also mentioned that they never seem to quell the concerns over the security implications, right? Being a Chinese company, and many people are running DeepSeek on their own devices rather than using the online version, just because they're worried about the data privacy challenges that might come with it.
There's the privacy part of it, but there's also the training part of it. They ask specific questions about historical facts within China that have been changed to the narrative of the Chinese government. That's a potential challenge right there. That's basically you've lobotomized the LLM with false information,
right?
And that by itself could cause people to say, well, I'm not sure I want to trust it at all. Even though it does work for the bulk of other activities. So we're going to see this across the board. These small language models, the large language models, the training that's being done with them will be targeting very specific things. So small language models, we talked about accounting before. Well, there's loads of them now that are focused on coding or some other very specific thing. And we're going to see this kind of separation, I think, as we have the monolithic large language models who are the end-all be-all type of thing. And then we have these myriad of small language models who are going to be excellent in a very specific discipline. And companies are going to have to figure out which of those they're going to want to leverage, depending on the output or the end goal that they're using them for.
Yeah. Well, the big AI tech companies certainly took pause when DeepSeek showed up. But now, a few months later, what are they doing? They're spending big bucks for more data centers, more chips, more power, and more people. If you're named Mark Zuckerberg, they're going for everything they can get.
That's so true. That's very true.
It didn't put them on the sideline for too long.
But no, they bounced back just fine.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for this Pulse Check. Thank you for joining us. Remember, we have another podcast that gets published every week with a incredible guest. So be sure and check that out. Otherwise, we will see you back this time next week for our next Pulse Check. Bye for now.